Abraham Lincoln said, "You can fool all the people some of the time. Some of the people all of the time, but you cannot fool all the people all the time." Good afternoon, I am MD and this is the fourth branch program. We are going to debate declassification of top secret document. But just a couple of notes. Last time we talked about two major news which have the potential of impacting not only citizens' life but the whole country. We debated yesterday Brett Kavanaugh. Although it is still in the news, it is still major news. You can find the information about Brett Kavanaugh on the People Branch YouTube channel. The discussion that we have yesterday is on the People Branch YouTube channel. Tonight we are going to talk about declassification of top secret document. Now there is an update. As of last night, during a rally in Las Vegas, Mr. Trump has backed away from ordering FBI and the Department of Justice to release those top secret documents. Again, this is an update, but this particular program was pre-recorded and it addresses a number of issues regarding that particular order from the President of the United States. That was unprecedented And we could not taken a look at not only what has happened in the past from previous president, but also what it means for the president of the United States to order declassification of top secret document. Now we must know that the president of the United States has all the authority in the world to proceed as ordered. However, the reason that has never been done before is because the primary job of the president of the United States is to protect the country from all enemies, foreign and domestic. And the declassification of top secret documents usually expose the very people, the very agent, both American citizen working undercover and also agents of other countries helping the United States fight terrorism and a bunch of other danger that may threaten the country. So as such, even the idea of ordering declassification of top secret document were frowned upon by not just retired intelligence agent, but also those who are to follow those orders. And during the time that we were recording this debate, this discussion, there were also talks that a number of intelligence agents would go as far as challenging the very idea or even leave their job if necessary, because they were not going to obey an order that would put the country in danger. Now, we all know that Donald Trump is a very unstable individual. He doesn't think, he doesn't know what he's doing, he doesn't understand how the country works, he acts on a whim, and he believes, ironically, that he is a smart individual, although it is very obvious to the rest of the world, except to him, that he is no smart individual. But he seems to think that his decisions would help achieve whatever goal he has in mind. And there is also one aspect that makes him all the more dangerous. Even before the book released by Bob Woodward, Fear, Trump in the White House, it was pretty obvious to everybody, even to a casual observer that Donald Trump doesn't think about the consequences of his action. He acts and hopes that other people would clean up after him. Although in his private life, that has worked just fine for him. But unfortunately, to run a country carries very serious consequences. And this is not just the United States, it's the whole world. Every action by the United States, by the President of the United States, is not inconsequential. Therefore, the idea of having a non-smart, non-intelligent, and someone who doesn't take advice in the Oval Office should scare the hell out of everybody. And it has, especially the people who work close to him, the people who work and report to him. In fact, just today, there is a report that Rod Rosenstein, who is the Deputy Attorney General, who is currently the acting Attorney General for the sake of the Mueller investigation, according to the report, he may have recorded the President of the United States during a meeting in the White House in order to convince members of in the legislative branch to invoke the 25th Amendment to get rid of Donald Trump from the Oval Office. Now, the Department of Justice pushed back and said no such thing ever happened. Regardless, we don't need any secret recording to know that Donald Trump is unstable. It is a behavior that's in full display every single day via tweets, during interviews, at any point in Donald Trump's life as the President of the United States. There is no ambiguity that the country, the world even, is dealing with someone who is very dangerous. According to Bob Woodward, he is a national security concern. Now, without further ado, we're going to go into a short break, a short commercial break. We'll come back to provide you with the actual discussion of the classified as to the danger of releasing classified document. I'll be right back.
I'm telling you, Michael Jordan himself was right here in my McDonald's. I fixed him the very first McJordan special.
Right, Bill.
I did. I took a quarter-pound of pure beef, smoked bacon, cheese, and some of my favorite barbecue sauce, and I named it the McJordan Special.
Bill, the sandwich, definitely great.
Yeah, but you got the cooling with that story.
But it's true.
How you doing, Bill?
Hi, Michael. Michael.
The McJordan Special.
Hello everyone, this is part 2 of the conversation. Last time we talked about Brett Kavanaugh in part 1. Tonight we will discuss part 2 in the conversation, which is in regard to declassification of top secret document. Hello everyone, I am MD and this is the 4th branch project, the first and only program which is dedicated exclusively for those with common sense, a spirit of patriotism, and a determination for a more perfect union. Declassification of top secret document. A few days ago, the President of the United States has ordered FBI as well as the Department of Justice to declassify specific documents. And in his request, he asked that all documents should have no redaction whatsoever, including email, and he gave very specific page numbers of document that need to be declassified. One aspect of the request jump at anyone who is looking at the request. It specifically targets former FBI personnel, as well as one who is currently working at the Department of Justice, which is all, whose primary job, whose expertise is in Russian investigation. The other individuals are Peter Stroh, James Comey. There are a couple of others who actually jump at anyone looking at it because of the fact that they too were part of the FBI involved in McCabe, involved in the Russia investigation. Now, because everything that is happening today becomes a political matter, then everything that's being looked at is being looked through the prism of politics. The country has two major political parties, and it is Democrats and Republican. Of course, there are other third parties, but they are usually small in numbers and importance. Now, there is absolutely nothing wrong with a president of the United States asking FBI, Department of Justice, or any other branch or agency of the government to declassify document that is within the purview of the power of the president. So there is no question there as to what he can and cannot do. But let's pause for just a moment in order to understand the request. Number one, keep in mind that since the existence of the Republic, meaning for 200 years, there has never been a single president who has ever made such requests. And there is a reason for that. And we'll talk about that in just a moment. 44 presidents before this current president never asked to declassify documents, top secret document, especially first of all, it is absolutely rare that anyone sitting in the Oval Office would ask to declassify document until after a certain period has passed regarding a particular topic. In other words, presidents have had document declassified before, but it usually has to do with documents about topics, about events, about action that our government or our secret intelligence agencies may have been involved in, but usually 25, 30, 50 years have passed before a president would sign off into the declassification of those documents. And because the logic behind that is because if 20, 30 years have passed, there is a very high likelihood that not only the information in those documents, no matter how top secrets they are, those information or action and personnel involved and so on, those are already done, gone. Some of those people who were involved may have already passed, and on top of that, the strategy, the techniques used to obtain the information in those documents may be obsolete. So when a president sign off to declassify top secret document, usually, not usually, always has to do with actions that have long passed, 2-3 decades at the very least. But what is different this time is because the information that Donald Trump is asking the intelligence agencies and the Department of Justice to declassify, number one, our current information that pertain to the, not just to the era we're living, but to the time, to the year that we are currently living in. And on top of that, it has to do with an investigation that's currently ongoing. This is absolutely unprecedented. Now, there are two camps that are talking about this very aspect of the request. The Republican camp, either, I would venture to say, either they simply do not care about the well-being of the country, and I say that not lightly, not to fall into this partisanship bickering, but to make a very specific point, because there is a reason that no one has ever done that. It's not because there is any law guiding that principle, because as you can see, the president, any president before this current president, had the same power, the same privilege to do exactly the same thing. Now, even Richard Nixon, during the time that he was in trouble and was close to being impeached, he didn't even fathom the idea of having documents declassified. Now, Republicans are trying to say that they want those documents to be declassified in order to see where the investigation is coming from. Now, I want you to keep in mind a very important aspect of that argument. Because when someone makes an argument, usually when you're looking at it through the prism of partisanship, and coupled with that the people who are making the argument, providing the audience, which is very receptive to conspiracy theory, who doesn't really care much as to what are the consequences of the action by the president. They simply want to be on the side of the president, and no matter what it takes, however bad it is for the country, they simply don't care. Now, keep in mind that the reason the demand, there are actually two reasons the demands are dangerous. One, it's because the request does not in any way, shape or form help the national security of the country. To the contrary, it actually put the national security of the country in danger, and I will explain in a moment why that is. And the second reason is because the ongoing investigation has Donald Trump as a target of that investigation. Now, remember I mentioned, keep in mind that the investigation itself is to be considered illegitimate, and here's the reason. Now, I just mentioned to you that the president himself is a target or a subject of that investigation. That's number one. And number two, the investigation will put the country in jeopardy. Now, if you are a patriot, if you are more concerned about the country than you are about an individual, then that should be of concern to you. Now, here's the reason declassify information without redaction will put the country in danger. Anybody, even if you never have any understanding of how intelligence agencies work, but you would know that intelligence agencies in the United States do not work alone. They work with other intelligence agencies around the world, especially with our allies. Now, it's interesting also to point out that we even share information with not so much enemies, but with other agencies such as Russia, for instance. We share certain information with them that have nothing to do with the actual running of a country, but if it has to do with terrorism or a danger that's going to impact the population, whether it's here in the United States or there in Russia, the agencies in the United States would pass that information to the Russian government. So declassification of document without redaction carries with it national security problem because of the simple fact, and you don't have to be a genius to understand that, but because of the simple fact that those information that were collected from other intelligence agencies around the world, some of them do not exist in reality, not in name, not in some of the government. That's what they and you've most likely seen movies where you pretty much heard that the individual who passed you an information say, I wasn't there. And this is not just a movie. This is something that happened in real life, where some operative in the field, they have different name, they go by different name, but they only have one picture. Yes, they may have a name here in the United States, a name in Italy, a name in Germany, a name in France, but the picture is still the same picture. So the minute that you put that information out, because if John, who happened to be John from England, who happened to be Jack in the United States, is the person that have provided information that are relevant in the investigation that's currently going on, the minute that you declassify that information without any redaction, then automatically you put the name of John out. Now, this is just a simple example. And keep in mind, the investigation in question is about one of the fiercest enemy that the United States has, Russia. So needless to point out that most of the investigation that are done and the information in those documents that Trump is asking for the intelligence agencies to declassify have, without any doubt, information provided to the United States by England, by Spain, by Australia, by Italy, by France, etc. And this is what the President of the United States, without any concern for the national security, want those information to be declassified for everybody to see. Now, let me ask you a simple question. If you were an individual who were providing important information to someone, information that can save that person's life, information that can protect that person's family, and then suddenly you find out that your name is going to be revealed, would you ever, if you survive that, would you ever pass information to that individual again? Why would you put your life in danger for someone who cannot keep your information hidden? Why would you do that? Now, multiply that with all the intelligence agencies around the world helping the United States, not only in terms of, and we're not just talking about just to defend United States against Russia. Information about terrorism, information about terrorist act, information about terrorists infiltrating into the United States. All those information are passed to intelligence agency in the United States, and those information are collected in the process and classified as top secret information and stored someplace. And when those information are needed, they are heavily redacted so that they can protect the people who are helping the United States stay safe. Now, you remove all those different countries that are collaborating with the United States intelligence agencies, passing information to help us keep the nation safe. Now you have the President of the United States, who on January 20th, 2017, raised his hand to protect the country. And this is today the same President of the United States, without any concern for the national security of the country, now decide, because it will help him personally, because there is no other explanation behind it. The only thing the president wants at this point, and everybody today that thinks supporting the president in this move, and Devin Nunes is one of the people in the White House. And sometimes I sit here and trying to understand how in the world someone could be chairman of a House Intelligence Committee whose primary job is to help protect the nation, and that individual is responsible to help undermine the national security of the nation. You don't have to be a genius to understand there is something wrong with that picture. Now, Republicans, in general, they want the conversation to turn into something else. He is the reason that they given in order for them to force the president or to encourage the president to declassify top secret document. That gentleman is Carter Page. Carter Page has been under surveillance by the FBI for a very long time. Not at the time that he joined the Trump administration. Way before that, Carter Page has been under investigation, or surveillance I should say, by the intelligence agencies. And the reason for that is because Carter Page is suspected to be a Russian agent. Now, this is not something that our intelligence agency just pull out of a hat and just accuse someone of being an agent of a foreign government, especially an enemy foreign government. It's not something that's pulled out of a hat. It's something, it is accompanied with information, classified top secret information that were collected and stored, and of course they continue to do surveillance on Carter Page, and it downgrades at some point, meaning it wasn't active surveillance until Carter Page popped up again and being part of the Trump team for the 2016 presidential election. Now, you can spin it 1,000 ways. No matter which spectrum of the political, which spectrum, which political affiliation you belong to, if you cannot put the national security of the country as a priority over something that's clearly, obviously a personal matter. Now, I do understand that the President of the United States being a target or a subject of a criminal investigation. And it is not small, because when you have a foreign government aggressively infiltrating into our country to destabilize the country using American citizens and using techniques that is what they call the enemy within, because they use the very people inside the country. Now, if that doesn't concern you, and you would prefer to see the whole country go to hell because it helps save Donald Trump, I'm not sure I'm grasping that. Because after Donald Trump, then what? Donald Trump is not there forever, and the country cannot be sacrificed for an individual. This is not Jesus. This is not God. This is just a man, and by all account, he is a very bad man who has done a lot of bad things. He had defrauded people, businesses, scammed people out of their hard-earned money. And on top of that, today, he is a subject of investigation for having collaborating with an enemy country. I'm not sure I understand the obsession about protecting someone who is clearly not doing the job for which you elected him. Because the very first thing that the President of the United States is tasked to do is to protect the country against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Now, here's the point I asked you earlier to keep track on. Today there is, and follow me very closely because this is important. There is currently a discussion in the news about the Christine Blasey Ford, who is the woman who has accused Brett Kavanaugh of sexually assaulting her in the past. Now, she wants FBI to do an investigation into her statement. Thus far, we haven't heard a peep from Brett Kavanaugh. Now, there is one thing that can easily be concluded. If you commit a crime, or if you lie, the last thing you would want to have happen is for the police, for a detective, for FBI to investigate into that matter. Now, no matter how dumb anyone is, that's very easy to grasp. If you didn't commit a crime and an investigation is being conducted, why would you care? Why should you care? If you didn't do anything wrong. Christine Blasey Ford asked FBI to investigate into the matter. That shows confidence, she doesn't have any problem to look into her statement. Brett Kavanaugh and everybody in the Republican side are silent about the other side of the story. Instead, they want to continue with what they're doing because, logically speaking, and that's what I keep reminding people, that when someone makes a statement, making the statement doesn't make it true, but the action behind the statement. And if you are a Christian, you already know that the Bible says that words without action actually are worth nothing. So Christine made the accusation and doesn't have any problem for FBI to look into it. On the other hand, and it is my suspicion that the Republican in Washington know that Brett Kavanaugh has a lot of things to hide, because so far they're not calling for that, and neither is Brett Kavanaugh. Because if Brett Kavanaugh feel that he didn't do anything wrong, if he feels that there was what Christine is saying didn't happen, then why not have FBI look into it? Because the whole point is, once FBI look into it, you will be exonerated. Then it will be better for you to have a clean page, a clean slate, where people cannot accuse you of being on the Supreme Court tainted. So why not? That brings me back to this declassification we're talking about. The reason it is telling, it's because if you want to see the information, because at this point that's really where the Trump administration is, doesn't know anything that's going on, and that bothers him, that troubles him, because he just cannot stand the idea of being in the dark. But that's not really the problem. The problem is he doesn't know how close the Mueller investigation is to his doorstep. And everybody that's supporting him, that's defending him, want to stop that from happening. And that's where the declassification of top secret document comes in. If you have nothing, remember how often that Donald Trump used to talk about there is no collusion, there is no collusion. You notice two things. One, he doesn't say that as often as he used to, because it's getting closer to his door. And number two, that declassification is a search for something that would give ammunition to say, aha, this investigation was not supposed to happen in the first place. And this is where I have the biggest problem with this argument, because everybody everybody who is currently on Trump team, on Trump's side, especially Devin Nunes, Jim Jordan, and Mark Meadows. Of course, Trey Gowdy is not as vocal as on the front line as often as Devin Nunes and the other two goons, but he's also part of the problem as well. Now, the only argument that they have, and they've been having that argument for the longest, that Carter Page, the investigation into the surveillance, the investigation which started the surveillance of Carter Page, which actually jumpstart the whole investigation, is or was illegitimate. So what they hoping to happen by the president doing this request for declassifying of document is to find something that says, aha, it wasn't supposed to happen. Now, two things. One, we already know the documents are currently posted on the Department of Justice website about the information surrounding Carter Page, why the government was conducting surveillance on him, and so on and so forth. So you don't have to wait for some talking head to tell you some stories that they concocted out of their head, and for you to go and repeat that out there as if it is news or as if it is the reason that those things supposed to happen. Number one, let's suppose for one moment we're going to give everybody that's drumming the beat of declassifying top secret document, we're going to give those people, the President of the United States, Devin Nunes and company, we're going to give all those people, including all the supporters that think it should be done as well, we're going to give all of those people the benefit of the doubt that for a split second that it wasn't the surveillance of Carter Page which started the investigation into Trump. Let's assume for one moment. Again, I want to be clear that I'm not saying that's the case, because as I just pointed out a minute or so ago, the information into Carter Page being under surveillance by the intelligence agencies began before Donald Trump even ran for presidency of the United States. So there is no argument there. It's already in the book. But for sake of conversation, we're going to take it a step further. We're going to assume, we're going to use the scenario where it wasn't the surveillance of Carter Page which jump-started the investigation. I'm actually going to put squarely the beginning of the investigation into Trump, meaning I'm going to use Trump talking point to say, let's suppose for one moment that the investigation started with just Donald Trump because the intelligence agency, FBI, decided to investigate Donald Trump, whatever reason. But what would remain in this particular scenario constant is the fact that whatever Donald Trump and company are saying, we start from there, that the investigation started in an illegitimate fashion. Let's suppose that's the case. Now, in order for you to understand what I'm about to say, and that's the reason I usually warn anyone who watches this video that it's not for just anybody. It's for people who are patriots, people who are more concerned about the well-being of the country than they are of a particular individual or political party. It's not because the objective of the fourth branch is to achieve a more perfect union, and it can only be achieved through education and through the complete eradication of ignorance. So I want you to follow that line of thought very closely. If you call 911 and you pass information that there is something going on next door that doesn't seem right. Let's say, for sake of argument, that you know neighbor next door is doing something that suspicious, either doing drugs, selling weapon, whatever that is, but you are suspicious that there is something going on. They dispatch someone to the neighborhood, and it so happened when the detective or the police officers go to next door, and it so happened that they find information pointing back to your place. For some reason. Let's say you had some sort of dealing with the neighbor next door at some point in the past, whatever that was. Maybe you too at some point even purchase a weapon from the neighbor, because the neighbor may have approached you and said that has extra weapon that is gonna sell if you would be interested in. If I get it at a good price, it's a nice weapon, whatever that is, you bought it from the neighbor who happened to keep note of all his activities. And it so happened that at the time that you call the police for the neighbor next door because of suspicious activities, now they find your name and your address on the book of activity, and sure enough there was something that was going on in that neighbor's house that's illegitimate, illegal, but your information shows up in one of the note that neighbor held. Now they come to your door, knock, walk in, and then search the house. Now you all upset because you figured, why are they searching my house? I call for the neighbor next door. And while they are inside, of course, I fast forward the whole scene for you so that you can get an understanding, because obviously for the police to search your house, then they would have to get a search warrant and so on and so forth. So I get rid of that because I want to make the point so that you get a good understanding of exactly what's happening with Trump asking for the declassification of top secret document. So while the police is inside your home, searching your home, and you realize your memory that, darn it, I went next door and I purchased a weapon, I don't even have a license for it. Now that's your reflection in your head. Now if at the time that police asked you to search the house and you were to say, yeah, I don't have any problem, you can search my house, and while they're doing that, you realize that there is something that's not right, because you have a gun, a weapon that you don't have a license for, that you did purchase from the neighbor next door. The same neighbor that you call in for the police to investigate. Now you just realize that, and then now you start screaming, "Get out of my house. I don't want you to search my house anymore." And notice the reason you would react that way. Notice the reason you would react that way. Notice the reason you would react that way. It's because you realize that you too did something wrong and it's about to be uncovered. Because when the police first suggested the idea of searching your home, before you remember that you had purchased a gun illegally, and on top of that you don't even have a license to carry, then you realize at that point that you have a problem. Then you want the police out of your home. Say, if you want to search my home, you have to get a search warrant. That's where we are at with Donald Trump. Because Devin Nunes, being the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, have seen tons of documents, classified documents, that clearly give him the information about the possibility that the President of the United States is compromised. Now, if he were doing his job, it would not be to help cover up for the president, because his job as chairman of the House Intelligence Committee, which he swore into, is to protect the Republic, not an individual. The Republic, the nation. So we can say with a high degree of certainty that Donald Trump and the Republican Party as a whole do not give a damn about the well-being of the country. As far as they're concerned, the country can burn. And in fairness, that can happen literally. Because imagine for 1 second that all those information are out. Now we don't have any foreign government collaborating with us anymore. So it's like a pilot flying blind. So yes, the country can go to hell, and God forbid a Democrat is in the Oval Office at that time, then the same people today that work to take the country down that path now would be blaming the individual in the Oval Office as putting the country in danger. So that's why this program is not made for the type of people who only see themselves, who cannot look at the bigger picture, who cannot think in order to preserve the nation that we have today. The nation that, the system that we have, the government that we have, in order to preserve it for the future generations. We cannot in any way, shape or form go along with this idea of declassification of top secret document. No matter how much you hear people spin it, it boils down to one thing and one thing only. It's to protect Donald Trump. Nothing else. There is nothing else. In fact, and this is the irony of the whole thing, protect an individual and destroy the country. And this is not euphemism either. This is literally speaking declassification of top secret document, where agents of intelligence agencies of countries around the world provide to us would not work with the United States anymore. And that's what we want. And that's what the people you elected to represent you in Washington to help safeguard our nation, to help protect it. Those are the people you want to continue to support, and you call yourself a patriot because you put your hand on your chest during national anthem, and to you that is patriotism? I'll be right back. I thank you for taking the time to at least get an understanding as to the severity of a particular action by the individual sitting in the Oval Office. The job is not a private job. It is a job which impacts every single individual in the country. So cheering a president who takes action, who says things that impacts our national security is not, if we cannot have, the system that was put in place by the framers of the Constitution to protect the national security of the country was well thought out. The executive branch can be easily controlled by the legislative branch, which unfortunately today that job is not being done. But there is still one last possibility to put a check on what's going on in the country, and that option, which is really the last option, is we the people. We are the last option to stop a government running amok. The executive branch, when it's running amok, the legislative branch job, primary job, is to put a check on the executive branch to prevent any rogue individual sitting in the Oval Office from destroying the country, from destroying our Constitution. I must say, in all fairness, I do not think the framers of the Constitution thought that you could have 435 members in a legislative body who would relinquish their jobs and not protect the country, but rather encourage an executive branch that's already not doing the job and support that executive branch. I do not think they thought about that. They thought such possibility would ever exist. But unfortunately, this is what's happening today. The legislative branch, which is led by the Republicans, are not doing the job, but worse, because it is one thing for a group of individuals to sit and do nothing, but it is a tragedy for them to be helping a government that is destroying the Republic. And that is today what the Republican Party is doing. So it is today up to the people of the United States to get rid of all those individuals. And this is not a party thing. This is the very existence of our nation. If we cannot come to the conclusion that it is necessary to get rid of all those individuals which are currently a cancer for the country, a cancer for our society, then the next generation, future generation, our children, our grandchildren will pay the price. It was already a mistake to have taken a chance to elect an individual who is completely incapable of running our government, who is completely incapable of grasping the simple concept of the importance of the presidency. It is a tragedy that the legislative body occupied, led by the Republican Party, is also an accomplice to this predicament. Today, it is imperative, it is necessary, it is urgent, it is critical that we get rid of that cancer for the sake of our kids, for the sake of our grandkids, for the sake of future generation. We must get rid of all those Republicans in Congress who are accomplices to what's going on in the country today. This is not an option not to. And you cannot not do anything. Thank you for watching. I hope to see you tomorrow at 10:30 a.m. for our regular program.
I'm telling you, Michael Jordan himself was right here in my McDonald's. I fixed him the very first McJordan special.
Right, Bill.
I did. I took a quarter-pound of pure beef, smoked bacon, cheese, and some of my favorite barbecue sauce, and I named it the McJordan Special.
Bill, the sandwich, definitely great.
Yeah, but you got the cooling with that story.
But it's true.
How you doing, Bill?
Hi, Michael. Michael.
The McJordan Special. For a limited time.
The United States of America is in a serious crisis. The biggest problem, the crisis that the country is going through now, is to have a network that's called itself news, but that says nothing about news. That's only telling lies, create controversies, and at the same time educating millions of people to stay or become ignorant. There is nothing that is said by Sean Hannity, there is nothing that is said at Fox that is true. So when I say the country is in a crisis, this is not an exaggeration. Donald Trump is wrong to call the media the enemy of the country. Adolf Hitler did exactly the same thing in 1933. Journalists are not in the business of fairness. Our business, our only business, is to be objective. It is our duty to hold Trump and every administration accountable. Today, it is urgent, it is necessary, it is critical. Our very freedom depends on it.
Wayfair, you got just what I need. Everything for my home, you got it for me. I never see selection quite like this. Every color and size in my mind. They got every single thing on my list. And with 70% off, who knows what I'll find. Wayfair, you got just what I need. Everything for my home, you got it for me. Wayfair, and the shipping was free. Now my home's the home I want.
From all of us at Wayfair, find what you need to.